I know what you're here for. Let's not delay. It's Valor HBG time, baby! Woo! Outside of Gun 2, Gun Harder State, you can't do the funny siege mode, but it doesn't matter. All you have to do is press Y so you get the weird blue aura. Then press X when you see your last two brain cells collide and make a spark. Then you get a blue background on your shots. When you hit monsters with your shots, it makes the bar fill faster. Then when the bar fills, you go into Gun 2, Gun Harder State. In Gun 2, Gun Harder State, siege mode shots fire faster and faster, allowing you to empty your brain while you empty your bullets. But be careful, because if you fully empty your load, then you'll do a sick-ass animation, but be locked into it. Fortunately, Capcom forgot that you could just leave the last bullet behind and not do the animation at all. That's pretty dumb of them, right? You can also do super cool dashes by pressing and holding B mid-roll for a short time, which makes you run basically infinitely, brah. You can exit it by pressing B again to slide. This slide can be done omnidirectionally and lets you re-enter Siege with X and A. Whoa! Strategy with Valor HBG. What strategy? All you have to do is brain off, Valor on. What's critical distance? Positioning? You can just press Y to dodge everything and win, bro. It makes you instantly good at the game. Don't listen to the people that tell you otherwise. They're just haters. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go join some multiplayer hubs and piss off the Blade Masters in it by constantly attracting aggro and making them chase the monster across the entire map while they're chasing me. And you better hope I don't randomly explode and cart failing the entire quest. Oh man, that was a wild dream. It felt distinctly American. Anyway, now that people have disliked and stopped watching the video, let's actually talk about Heavy Bowgun. While you have Heavy Bowgun equipped, you'll notice that you have a secondary bar above your item bar. This contains all of the bullets, or shots as they're called, in your item pouch. By default, you'll always have an infinite amount of normal S level 1s equipped, but you'll usually have several types of ammo here that you can switch between. Your bowgun supports only select few types of ammo, depending on the bowgun and its level. You can check this by looking on the 6th and 7th pages of the Heavy Bowgun whilst inspecting it in your equipment box, or the 3rd and 4th pages while inspecting it in the smithing menu. The columns here refer to the level of ammo, while the rows correspond to an ammo type. While holding down L, you can press X and B to switch up and down through your reserve ammo. With an ammo selected, you can press X to reload and ready that ammo to be fired. You can also combine unsheathing and reloading in one action by pressing R, X, and A. Note that if you select a different ammo type, you'll unload the shots you have loaded, so make sure you actually want to switch out ammo types and never forget to reload. If you do try to shoot, your gun will jam, so always keep an eye on your loaded shot count, which is shown in the top left of the screen, or right under the reticle if you're scoped in. By now, you've likely noticed the different colored backgrounds behind the shots and wondered what they mean. No background means it's a shot you carry in your gunner pouch and have to bring before hunts, what I like to call a common shot. A green background means that you can siege it, which we'll cover later. Blue background means that it's an internal shot, a shot that your bowgun will always carry at the start of hunts by default, and not have to bring in your gunner pouch. You can't make more of it through combining, however. A combination of a green and blue background simply means that it's an internal shot that you can siege. With ammo loaded, you can press A to fire. By default, you'll always fire straight forward in the direction your character is facing. You also can't move while you shoot, which is a thing I have to clarify apparently. You can aim your shots by either tapping R to scope in, or pressing and holding R to quick aim. While scoped, you can't move, but you can change your aim direction with either stick or the D-pad, assuming you're using Control Type 3, which is what I use and recommend. You can tap R to stop scoping, or press B for a forward roll, also cancelling scoping. It's at this point we should sidebar over to the options, which affect bowgun play more than Blade Master weapons. You have a bevy of options that only affect the bowguns. For instance, scope controls and quick aim controls allow you to invert the camera axis for either the X-axis, Y-axis, or both. The important option here is bowgun controls, where it controls how you enter aiming mode. Type 1 makes you aim in the direction your character is facing in the angle that your camera is facing. Type 2 makes you aim in the direction and angle your camera is facing, ignoring your character. Type 3 makes you aim in a direction and angle your character is facing, ignoring your camera. This option is important, but we need to talk about a future mechanic for context, and I don't want to get into another tangent, so let's move on to the next option instead. Quick aim controls. This option controls how the camera works when you start and stop quick aiming. Type 1 moves the camera to your back when you start quick aiming, and doesn't readjust when you stop. Type 2 doesn't move the camera when you start quick aiming. Note that this option doesn't apply when you have Type 2 bowgun control, since your character will rotate in the camera's direction anyway. Type 3 moves the camera to your back when you start quick aiming, like Type 1, but resets back to its default angle when you stop quick aiming. Type 4 and 5 work like Type 1 and Type 3 respectively, but prevents you from shoving your camera into the ground or too high into the air. This option, unlike bowgun controls, is mostly preference. Next up, reticle speed. This is obvious. There are 3 speeds: default, fast, and slow. This affects both scoped and quick aim reticle movement. This option is preferential depending on factors such as matchup or how fine you want to adjust your aim. Finally, target cam behavior isn't directly part of the bowgun controls, but it can help when quickly readjusting your camera after a fast monster. Type 1 makes it so that your camera adjusts both direction and angle on target cam use, essentially resetting your angle. Type 2 doesn't change your camera angle, only its direction. This is also somewhat preferential, but it also depends on the matchup just like reticle speed. It's best to use Type 2 when the monster's head is consistently offset from where you'd reset your camera. One last thing to mention about aiming and quick scoping. If you exit scoping by pressing R or simply stop quick aiming, your hunter will maintain the trajectory you had last, even if you reload. The only things that reset your trajectory is moving, or performing Heavy Bowgun's unique mechanic, sieging, or crouching fire as the game calls it. Let's discuss that now. Siege mode can only be used with compatible shots, which differ depending on the Heavy Bowgun you use. Check compatible shots by looking at the 9th page of the equipment details, or the 6th page of the Smithy menu. You'll know when a shot is siege compatible if it has a green background when you select it. Enter siege mode either through X and A while idle, or by pressing X during the first half of your roll. Note that if you do not have a compatible shot selected when you start sieging, the game will prompt you to select a siegeable shot by pressing A on the one you want. Siege mode allows you to hold down the A button to fire shots, and they fire more quickly than normal. Furthermore, you load a fixed amount of shots while you're sieged up, regardless of what your base capacity is. The catch is that you can't move at all, and attempting to move will only adjust your aim. Furthermore, you cannot roll out of this state, and pressing B will force you to stand up in a lengthy animation, which you also cannot roll out of until later. You can't even use Hunter Arts while sieged, so suffice to say, this is a commitment. Because of the lengthy commitment, you'll probably figure out that siege mode doesn't really work. Like, at all, in guild style at least. More often than not, attempting to siege when playing alone is like putting a giant neon sign around yourself that says "Kick me," because it's a massive commitment for marginal gains. Because of this, sieging is hardly worth it outside of the styles that make it broken as heck, or if you're playing in multiplayer, where you have additional bodies to attract attention. To go back to what I mentioned earlier about bowgun controls, entering siege mode also resets your aim, and how the game resets your aim differs depending on the bowgun control type you have selected. Type 1 will prevent your angle from being adjusted when you enter siege, as long as you stop quick aiming before you enter siege, whereas both Type 2 and 3 will reset your angle back to eye level no matter what. So for sieging heavy styles such as Vinny and Adept, Type 1 is favored over Types 2 and 3. If you're not using siege as much or at all, then the type of bowgun control you use is up to preference. We've covered all the big stuff about Heavy Bowgun, so now for the smaller stuff. Press the special attack button to perform a stock strike, dealing the same damage as a kick but with some added KO and exhaust. This is rarely useful and you can basically ignore it. In midair, you can either perform a jumping reload of X or fire a shot automatically aimed where your camera is facing with A. This shot ignores bowgun control type. Also, this shot still obeys recoil, so if you fire a shot with recoil in midair, you'll have to recover a bit on the ground. Now that we've covered Heavy Bowgun's moveset, let's zoom out a bit and talk about gunner fundamentals. Not only do all your bullets deal shot type damage, meaning you'll have to look at shot hit zones rather than cut or impact type hit zones, but you also have to manage critical distance. Shots have different distances at which they deal an additional plus 50% damage, known as the critical distance. Don't confuse critical distance for critical hits, by the way. Critical distance functions as a different modifier from affinity and critical hits, so even though they both have critical in the name, they refer to different things. You can tell that your shots are hitting in critical distance if you see your screen shake and the hit spark color is whitish yellow. Additional sound effects will also play if you're hitting in critical distance, so if you hear this sound, then you're good. Other distances will have no screen shake and have different colors and sound effects. This includes normal distance with an orange hit spark and no bonuses or penalties to damage, long distance with red and a 20% reduction in damage, and extra long distance with yellow and a 50% reduction in damage. To reiterate, you should really be making sure that all of your hits are landing in critical distance. A common problem with Pierce type shots is that some hits will land outside of critical distance, which can be difficult to verify because the hit sound effects and hit sparks will often overlap each other. The easiest way to confirm is the sound effects method, but if you're hard of hearing or have sound off, then paying attention to the screen shake and hit effects will also work. Let's make things explicit. You have 3 goals to hit simultaneously as a gunner. You want to 1. Remain in critical distance, while 2. Being in a position where you have to move as little as possible to remain out of the monster's reach, and 3. Having good shot angles to hit the weak spot constantly. Not hitting any of these goals individually will see your kill times plummet really fast, since critical distance and good shot hit zones are a massive influence on your damage output. Reducing unnecessary movement while also being out of the reach of the monster is also good, since while you're moving you can't shoot, obviously, but also taking attacks is a bad idea due to your reduced defense. The key to maintaining these 3 goals is, well, firstly, a lot of experience with monsters. Monsters will react differently to gunners shooting them versus blade masters being at melee range, but you will more easily see attacks incoming because you're out of range, more easily letting you dodge attacks. If you don't have quite as much experience, just remember that playing as a gunner does share the same fundamentals as a blade master, namely the commitment you have while you're shooting. If you find yourself eating a few too many attacks, slow down and observe the monster, shooting them only while they're performing attacks and not staring directly at you. Then gradually get used to maximizing your windows by shooting more often. Also, really hone your aiming skills. Finding the right lines to hit monster weak spots is paramount. I cannot stress this enough. You can't get away with shooting any spot on a monster while getting good times. You must shoot good hit zones, and you don't have excuses otherwise. You're a gunner. You have access to about every single hit zone you want to. Another tip, you'll want to keep an eye on your area positioning. Wide open areas are better than being right up against the wall or ledge because you'll have an easier time repositioning for critical distance when you can choose where you position freely, rather than wasting time by only being able to run in one direction, or worse, getting hit because you can't dodge out of the way of AoE attacks. This is something that is also prevalent for Blade Masters, but for Gunners this aspect is much more important to your play. Oh, and if it wasn't obvious before, you're gonna want to roll everywhere with Heavy Bowgun. Walking around or constantly sheathing and unsheathing your bowgun is pretty slow, so try to roll to good positions. Alright, let's segue back to another bowgun specific topic. Recoil, reload speed, and deviation. These are all stats that are prominently shown on the first page of your bowgun's details, and act as the replacement for sharpness. Recoil is the most important stat here. Instead of bowguns having fire rate as you might see in other games, recoil serves as the replacement. Different shots have different levels of recoil when you fire them, creating no recoil, some recoil, or high recoil. I won't go over the details of how recoil stages are calculated here, so all you need to know is that average recoil is good enough for both normal S level 2 and Pierce S level 1, the most commonly used shots. If you want to fire Pierce S level 2 or 3, then you'll need some recoil to fire recoillessly. Side note, I may refer to Pierce S level 1 as Pierce 1 or P1s, and normal S level 2s as N2s or simply normals, since level 2 is better than level 3. Now, if you're thinking that I'm about to go to and detail every single shot type here, no. I didn't want to repeat myself between heavy and light bowgun, and also this script is long enough as it is, so look at the companion shot compendium video if you want the details on every single shot. Otherwise, I'll just be focusing on the 2 most commonly used shots, Pierce, and less importantly, normal in this video. Some people say that Siege negates or reduces recoil. This is factually incorrect. You still obey recoil rules while you're sieged. Reload speed is less important than recoil, simply because, well, you do it less often than actually interacting with your shots, but it does matter when you're figuring out when a good time to reload is. Like recoil, you have 3 stages of reload speed: fast, average, and slow. For the most part, you can ignore the stat, partially because N2s and P1s reload at the fastest speed and average reload speed, but also because there are plenty of ways to circumvent reload speed, such as using your jumping reload, using a monster roar to cancel your reload animation, or by simply using absolute readiness. Other styles also have their own ways to cheat out reload speed, and on Heavy Bowgun specifically, sieging automatically loads your HPG to siege capacity anyway, so you don't have to reload manually as often on siege heavy styles. Oh, and even though reloading while jumping from a ledge is a good way to combine mobility with utility, if you start it too late or have a slower reload speed, you'll have to finish the reload on the ground, so keep that in mind. Deviation you can also ignore for the most part. This is shown as either L, R, or LR, followed by mild or severe. If your bowgun doesn't have deviation, it just won't show anything there. This affects how your shots travel past about mid-range, either curving to the left or right, as was implied through L and R. The amount it curves by is totally random per shot, but it is still manageable, especially if it only goes in one direction. Just adjust in the opposite direction of the deviation by a tiny bit. Let's briefly cover the mechanics of the most commonly used shots, normal S level 2 and Pierce S level 1. Pierce 1s, and more generally, the whole Pierce family, are your staple shots, useful on most of the monsters in the game. Shoot it, and it travels through monsters, hitting multiple times while it's in contact with the monster. Some people might think that Pierce shots aren't that great on monsters because Pierce might go straight through the monsters, but this is untrue. Simply look at my Hunter arc gauge as this Pierce shot hits. Pierce 1s will typically land all of their hits on most monsters' weak spots in the game, or put in more tangible terms, Pierce 2s will land all of their hits even through a Kirin's body if you shoot it straight on. Also, to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, please try to keep all the Pierce hits in critical distance. Just because one hit landed in critical distance doesn't mean the rest landed, so be mindful of that. Again, use the sound effects or hit sparks to ensure critical distance. The other shot is normal S level 2, or N2s for short. This one is more straightforward than Pierce. You shoot it, and it hits the monster once. N2's optimal use case is when you have a single good weak spot surrounded by zones that are a lot worse to shoot, such as Yankuruga's head, which, while you could pierce it, is finicky to get optimal angles on. This does not include monsters that are just made of bad hit zones though, such as Snow Baron Lagombi or Nebelsnarf, since those monsters have good pierce angles to shoot with decent hit zones along the way. Even though they don't have weak spots, they don't use normals. You should just assume that pierce is just the go-to for the majority of monsters in the game, unless you don't have any latchberries left. You can fight a bunch of monsters, particularly in progression, with just normal 2s, but you'll see a boost in kill speed when you use pierce. Let's wrap up this section with some miscellaneous things to know. Firstly, Heavy Bowgun has a hidden plus 48% raw damage modifier to its shots, only affecting raw damage. This is larger than the Light Bowgun's plus 30% modifier, so in case you were wondering why anyone would run a bowgun with less mobility, there you go. You can attach one of two attachments to your bowgun in a smithy, the power barrel and the shield. For all intents and purposes, you can pretend that the shield does not exist because you can roll that out of the way of most things, and it doesn't even have that good of a guard level. Power barrel, on the other hand, is a simple 5% boost to your attack. Always put it on. You can swap out the power barrel and the shield at any time for as small as any cost. You aren't locked into either attachment when you select one. You also have two scope options, variable zoom or fixed zoom. Fixed zoom is default, while variable zoom you have to switch to in the smithy. With variable zoom on, you can zoom in and out with the D-pad while you're scoped in. The type of zoom you use is preferential. Variable zoom can kinda sorta help if you want to get super accurate, or if you really want to zoom in on your friends getting absolutely blasted by a monster. Or use fixed zoom if you like using the D-pad to move around your aim while you're scoped in. To be clear, you can attach either scope with either the shield or power barrel. While aiming using the scope is accurate for the most part, you should know that when you fire, the bullets come out slightly below your reticle. It's just like real life. Additionally, keep in mind that the reticle for quick aim is accurate only at a certain distance. Aiming beyond that will require additional adjustment, and you might want to consider scoping for that. After a while of gunning, you'll build up enough knowledge to instinctively know how to adjust your sights when quick aiming. One more tip, you already know that you can cancel your reloading animation when a monster roars, right? Well, if you didn't, you know now. And also, if you start combining additional ammo before a monster roars, you can still combine through the monster roar, even if you flinch from it, which is handy. Oh, yeah, you should definitely bring additional combines for the main ammo type you're using if you aren't doing that already. If you aren't, you're playing with a fraction of the available ammo you should be, so you should start doing that. Also, do note that you can rearrange your combo list to your liking, so you can put your favorite ammo combines first. Also, the combo list can be made to put combinables first with X. Did you know that shooting your bowgun will mean you attract more aggro in hunts? It's true. Just like hunting horn, creating noise will gradually add to your aggro value, which means that when you shoot, you attract more aggro from the monster. So be on your feet in case you're shooting a little bit too often. For the final tip, as a gunner, you do have access to the gunner pouch, which is reserved exclusively for your ammo. If you have more types of shots than your gunner pouch's capacity can store, then you can also store them in your normal item pouch. Certain quests will also prevent you from bringing items in your item pouch, but importantly for gunners, it ignores your gunner's pouch, meaning that you can still bring ammo you take in those quests. You just can't take combines. Don't forget that, as a gunner, you have different armor sets from Blade Masters. You can filter for gunner-only armor at the smithy with the plus button. Only headpieces can be shared between Blade Masters and gunners. Now that guild is done, it's time to talk about the remaining styles. Don't worry, this will be quick. Next is Striker. Striker doesn't let you siege at all, straightforward. Here comes Aerial Style. Aerial Style lets you roll directly from siege mode with no recovery time afterwards, and can be performed either to the left or right. You can still siege after an aerial hop by pressing X when you land on the ground, so that option is still open to you. While in midair, pressing X and A will fire shots downwards towards the monster or ledge you just jumped away from, rather than firing towards your camera direction. If you have a siegeable shot loaded, you fire up to 3 times instead. If you hit the ground early or run out of loaded shots, you'll stop early. Not only that, but even if you have recoil when you fire the shot, the recoil is negated when you fire it this way. Furthermore, this shot will always land in critical distance, no matter what its normal critical distance is. Regardless, when you land on the ground, you'll perform a special animation, during which you can press X and A to immediately siege. This siege will automatically start in the direction you jumped off from, but you can adjust it when you land by pressing on the C stick in the direction you want to siege. Furthermore, if you perform a boost jump off a monster or object, you'll perform a power load, which applies whether or not you're fully loaded. A power load is a fixed length reload, so no matter how slow you load some bullets normally, you'll always load them quickly with a power load. While the power load is in effect, shown by the blue background behind your shots, they get a slight damage increase. Next up, Adept Style. Adept, like Aerial, lets you roll out of siege mode. Unlike most other dodges, this dodge out of siege is truly omnidirectional, and can trigger Adept dodges. Speaking of which, after an Adept dodge, you can choose to do one of 2 things. Press X and you'll begin power running in the direction you face after landing from the Adept dodge, which doesn't eat stamina and lets you move fairly quickly in a direction. Don't press anything and you'll instead perform power load, which functions like it does in Aerial Style. After you power load, you can press X to immediately go into siege mode. Alchemy Style works exactly like Striker Style, except in addition to being unable to siege, you also have innate reload speed +1, and can also reload with A while you're out of ammo, but only while you're jumping, for some reason. Oh, and you can also press R and Y to perform an Alchemy Barrel Sheath after any roll. Furthermore, you also make Alchemy S instead of Alchemy Whetstones as your first Alchemy Barrel option, and as Alchemy Style, you can load more Alchemy bullets than other styles. The changes don't stop there, however. All shots carry an additional hidden -10% Hunter Art charge rate penalty. Charge the Alchemy Barrel faster by landing shots in critical distance. It's kind of pointless to do style analysis, because ever since Vinny was introduced into the game, if you can't vomit your entire ammo reserve in less than a minute, then you're automatically worse than it. So let's ignore that and talk about the rest of the styles anyway. Out of the remaining styles, Adept comes in front. Adept style is the best for siege heavy play and is the main alternative to Vinny in case you don't want to be seen in public abusing it. It's kind of difficult to pilot with the power run thing, and especially so because you need to judge how often you need to power run versus standing your ground and sieging up. Making mistakes is still punishing, unlike Vinny, because you have plenty of times where you simply cannot Adept dodge, so managing follow-up attacks is key. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, or Vinny, for new players, simply because you have to take more risks to actually Adept dodge things compared to normal, and you have to learn gunner fundamentals on top. In particular, dodging in different directions can greatly impact your play, affecting where you power run or position to finish your Adept dodge in critical distance. Oh, and you can also play Adept style without sieging, but it does give sieging a huge safety net. possibly a bit too large, so that's why it's the best for it. If you don't siege as much or at all, consider Striker style instead. Striker style is the best for non-siege play simply because you have access to 3 Hunter Arts, which all recharge slightly faster than normal. I'm not sure what else to add on here that isn't based on Alchemy styles, so there. Speaking of which, Alchemy style is up next. It retains 3 Hunter Arts, but not only does it lose the Striker HA charge rate buff, it also has a penalty on top of that. The items from the barrel as well as the reload speed buff isn't really worth it either. Guild is up next. It finds itself here mainly because it doesn't really commit to sieging or non-sieging, and sieging its guild is slow as heck to both get into and get out of. It's mostly a downgrade from the previous styles. Aerial is... well, unfortunately, it isn't just aerial. It's aerial on a gunner weapon, which is immediately suspect. Sure, you can play some weird meme shit on it, but at the end of the day, you're still hurling yourself into the monster with less defense for not that great of upsides. Additional minus points for not being able to aim the downward shots, which introduces the possibility of missing entirely. Like, sure, you can cheat out critical distance and ignore recoil, but when you can actually aim and manage your distance well as Heavy Bowgun, those upsides quickly become overshadowed by you being forced to stay close to the monster to activate them, which isn't generally a good idea. And even when you do get into the air, you still have to rely on the monster not fly swatting you down, which can be a tough ask. You can sorta treat this like a bootleg Adept by jumping into monsters, but if you're just looking to use the power load, you're gonna be going up against Adept. To make things clear, none of the HPG styles are cripplingly bad. I mean, Aerial still has the Aerial Hop, which can definitely screw with your positioning, but it's not like it's not salvageable or anything. The entirety of Heavy Bowgun is just overshadowed by Vinny use in general, and I've seen a lot of opinions that think that no other HPG style is actually worth it, but this isn't true. You can still run HPG with any of the other styles, and of course, you won't be as broken as Vinny, but you can definitely get by hunts without using it. Let's get into Hunter Arts. First up is Supernova. You charge up, then fire out a piercing shot, which, after a period of time, it then explodes, dealing a bunch of fixed damage. If you manage to connect it with a monster immediately when it explodes, it deals more damage than if the monster just grazed the side of the explosion. Do keep in mind that if you shoot the shot into a surface before it explodes, it'll fizzle out, so don't do that. Increasing ranks increases the charge time marginally, and reduces the damage of grazing hits, but cranks up the power of direct hits. Guns Blazing fires a canister into the air, which empowers you for a brief period. During this time, all recoil is negated, and reload speed is the fastest for all shots. You can also walk around much faster than usual, about as quickly as rolling around. Increasing ranks boosts effect duration. Gunpowder Infusion loads some gunpowder into your bowgun, granting a set amount of shots a 15% damage bonus, which affects all shots, including element and fixed type shots. Furthermore, you can charge this Hunter Art even while it's still in effect, stacking up to 99 empowered shots. What's more, you can even cancel it with roars like you can with reloading, since the effect takes place immediately on use. Increasing ranks increases the number of shots empowered. Finally, Void Piercer loads a giant pile bunker into your Heavy Bowgun, and charges it up, after which you fire at a short range forward. Uniquely, even compared to Slicing S, it deals cut deck damage based on the cutting hit zones of things you hit, whereas normally it would be based on the shot hit zone. Also, if you have shield equipped, you can guard things while you're charging up and firing this. Don't do this. Increasing ranks increases the damage dealt, stagger damage modifier, and also increases time to charge. Time for Hunter Art analysis. Unfortunately, Heavy Bowgun Hunter Arts may as well be an endangered species due to the overpopulation of Mass Combiner and Absolute Readiness, which offer fantastic utility for Heavy Bowgun. Mass Combiner helps to stretch out every last bit of combined materials for your pierce shots, and because Vinny frees you from normally reloading like ever, the reload effect of Readiness falls to a wayside in a lot of hunts. Still, for Absolute Readiness, the reloading utility still is there, and combined with the invulnerability period, is great for repositioning past lots of attacks. Gunpowder Infusion is the best art out of the Heavy Bowgun arts, since the effect is straightforward. You can also charge it while you still have the effect, allowing for infinite uptime past first cast, assuming your shots land consistently enough. Do keep in mind that the animation can and will leave you vulnerable, even if you perform reload cancels with it, so it's not the freest thing in the world to use. Also, remember that you can't use Hunter Arts while sieged, so you may find yourself running out of empowered shots if you use Gunpowder Infusion with a siege-heavy playstyle. Guns blazing is weird. Considering that you want to already shoot the most common shots recoillessly anyway, you're never going to use this in a conventional strategy due to its somewhat low uptime and high charge time, considering that shots have difficulty charging Hunter Arts. The movement speed buff is also inconsequential, as you either roll all the time, or in Finny and Adept's case, you just power on when you need to, rather than awkwardly walking around. What it does enable is either extra impactful shots, such as Pierce 2 or 3 when you have average recoil, or status shots, particularly in multiplayer. Guns blazing certainly does a job, I just wish the job was more beneficial to normal playstyles. Both Supernova and Void Piercer suffer from being offensive arts, and especially so from being offensive Hunter Arts on Heavy Bowgun, which doesn't necessarily need the help. Supernova does scaling fixed damage, for some reason, meaning that you siege once with Pierce 1 on a weak spot, and you probably outdamage this Hunter Art. Void Piercer is basically the pile bunker from Armored Core 6, but unfortunately for you, you aren't a 50-ton mech with 60 boosters strapped onto yourself. In other words, why the heck are you running what is basically a melee Hunter Art on a gunner, forcing you to manually roll up to a downed monster and use this, when you could just skip all of that nonsense and just keep shooting? Oh, and I'm not even going to mention the shitty shield interaction. It's progression time! Very quickly, before we begin, the display I've elected to use for each weapon looks like this. If it isn't clear what the N2 and P1 in the top right corner stand for, those are normal 2 and Pierce 1 capacities. If they're highlighted in red, then that's the shot you should focus on, and if neither are highlighted, then that will mean the bowgun uses siege, or an alternative shot type that I'll mention. Okay? Good. For quick progression, it should be noted that Heavy Bowgun doesn't follow the usual Petrified, Obsidian, and Elder paths that Blade Masters do. Instead, you'll start with Arbalest in the early game, then grab Hidden Gambit from Nargacuga for Pierce 1 Siege, then Cirrus Blaster for Unsieged Pierce. High rank starts with Hidden Gambit, which is useful throughout it, especially with increased Pierce 1 load, whereas Cirrus Blaster receives upgrades in Village 9. Also in Village 9, Berrios' Heavy Bowgun, the Guerrera Cannon, becomes available, which is good for Unsieged Pierce 1 play. Transitioning to G rank, you can use the Elder Cannon or any of the previous bowguns to shoot through G1. Then G2, Nargacuga's Baleful Knight returns, maintaining usefulness through the rest of the rank. G3 carries both Mizusune's Mountainous Roar and Berrios' Foreign Cannon, so choose based on what your needs are. Armor is also not as straightforward. Like Blade Masters, you start with Bushibu, but you only get attack up M in the early game. Please note that Gunner armor is separate from Blade Master armor. You can filter for either Blade Master or Gunner equipment in the Smithy menu by pressing plus by default. Do note that helmets can be shared between Blade Master and Gunner, no matter which one you choose. The difference will mostly be defense and the skill point distribution it gets. From there, you can opt to go with Nargacuga for Evade Extender if you're playing Siegeless at the cost of some amount of damage. Full Rathalos is next, which provides both Weakness Exploit and Attack Up M. High rank, you can get Nargacuga S for Siegeless play and Modern Defense. Then you can get a mix set of Rathalos from head to waist, then Glaveless Leggings S. Combine it with a few decorations to get Weakness Exploit, Attack, and Shot Booster, vital for Pierce. In G rank, it gets really hard to recommend specific mix sets because nothing is going to be perfect, especially full sets. And you'll likely have charms of varying quality. Use a set searcher to determine what you can make, and if you're lost about what skills to shoot for, go to the Endgame Recommendations section to get a general idea. Quickly though, you should prioritize Pierce Up or Normal Rapid Up for your main shot type. Never both, because specializing is better than generalizing. After that, get Shot Booster if you're using Pierce. If you're playing Siegelessly, Evade Extender is greatly recommended for mobility. After those, get your typical damage boosters, such as Weakness Exploit or Attack Up. A generally available mix set available in G3 is Rathalos and Lagiacrus Cross. Just follow the on-screen armor pieces and decorations to make it. You can also add more attack gems on top, depending on your available slots. Alright, I know that wasn't very quick, but now's the time for in-depth progression. Low rank, it's fine to use the Petrified Cannon at first. One copy is given to you for free after all. The Arbalest will hit slightly harder than the Petrified Cannon. In both cases, you can use either normal or Pierce. Both of them get upgrades in Village 2, and you'll also gain access to the Meteor Bazooka, which is your first big siege-based bowgun. Unfortunately, it'll have recoil on its Pierce S level 2, since it only has average recoil and not the required some recoil. But if you're really chomping at the bit for some siege action, there it is. Regardless, get Boujaboo, since everyone appreciates its attack up. Gunners will be limited to attack up medium without external slots though, so keep that in mind. Village 3 gives upgrades to the Arbalest and the Meteor Bazooka. There's also the interesting option in the Yankutku Cannon, which is capable of shooting Crag and Clust. It's crafted through the Arbalest, which loses usefulness at this point. It can help against tough monsters, especially early on where the fixed damage of those shots have relatively more impact. Consider it against Nebelsnar, for example. Village 4 grants an upgrade to the Arbalest again if you opted to skip the Yankutku Cannon. Then, access to Naturala's Bite Blaster through the Meteor Bazooka, which also loses usefulness past this point. The Bite Blaster is good for normal, both sieged and unsieged, so it's good for when you need to save on Latchberries. Speaking of which, Nargacuga's Hidden Gambit becomes accessible. This early on, the Hidden Gambit's low Pierce 1 load makes it difficult to use unsieged, but the fact that it can siege Pierce 1s makes it good for siege-focused styles. For unsieged playstyles, you can also grab Nargacuga's armor set for the earliest available F8 extender, greatly enhancing mobility. Village 5 grants Hidden Gambit an upgrade, as well as Mizutsune's Cirrus Blaster, a fantastic option for Siegeless Pierce, as it carries and fires all Pierce levels. Astalos' Wyvern Blaster is an option for unsieged Pierce 1s with its higher capacity and attack compared to Hidden Gambit. And finally, the Giant's Cannon acts as the next fixed damage HPG. Graphilos' armor set will also do you good, with its access to Weakness Exploit and Attack Up. In Village 6, the Cirrus Blaster gains an upgrade, and you also gain access to Toilisha Abzu, Gore Magala's HPG, which favors normal shots either sieged or unsieged. If you're progressing in your village requests and like the gameplay of Crag and Clust shots, then you can make the Achromatic Needler for a high capacity Crag and Clust. In Hub, the Daotas Delphinidae is a major landmark for sieged Pierce play, so it's highly recommended. There's also the Skeletal Cannon from the Carcass, which, while it comes extremely late, it's a fine bowgun for unsieged play, either normal or Pierce. With high rank comes several upgrades, to Wyvern Blaster, Giant's Cannon, and the Ors Delphinidae. The Burning Igna is your main option for unsieged normals, while the Syed Cannon, from Seregius, is a fine option for sieged normals. It uniquely has the capability to auto-load a shot when you roll with the weapon out, though it wouldn't really affect siege play, and it can't shoot Pierce recoillessly. In Village 8, the Burning Igna, Skeletal Cannon, and Achromatic Needler gets upgrades. Unfortunately for Crag and Clust, I can't reasonably recommend further fixed damage options past this point. Bye-bye! As for new options, the Griffin's Charge becomes available from Celtis through the Obsidian Cannon, which is a fine sieged normal option. For Pierce, Plesios's Pressurized Placer pleases for perpetuity with its higher attack power compared to the Hidden Gambit, so get it if you need a modern sieged Pierce option. You also gain Nargacuga to make Nargacuga S with, a modern option for Evade Extender if you're playing siegelessly. Village 9 comes with upgrades to most of the bowguns you've seen so far: Hidden Gambit, Cirrus Blaster, and the Syed Cannon. With the introduction of Bardioff in Village 9 also comes his Guerrera Cannon, a fine option for unsieged Pierce level 1 play. If you've been doing Hyper Monsters in Hub 6, then both the Otis Delphinidae and Skeletal Cannon get upgrades, the former of which is especially recommended. As for armor, a special Graphilos and Glavenus mix set grants Weakness Exploit, Attack Up, and Shot Booster, which is vital for Pierce shots. Village 10 itself doesn't give out any upgrades, but in Hub 7, you gain upgrades for Mountainous Roar, Glavenus Scorcher, Thorn Cannon, and Furious Edition through Hyper Monsters. After Hub Diablos, it's recommended that you get the Aura Grande if you're into siege play. If you're sticking around on high rank and clearing Deviants, there's also a Cantor Sky Sounder for sieged normal play, and Shigeru Megala's Lafoy for both sieged and unsieged normal play. It's also at this point that you should start to move on to mix sets pretty much permanently, as there won't be any good full sets during G-rank progression for gunners. Remember to prioritize your shot type upskill, Pierce Up, or Normal Rapid Up as appropriate, then get Shot Booster if you're running Pierce. You don't need Shot Booster for normal shots, to be clear. Then you'll need Evade Extender if you're running Siegeless play. After that, just stick on however much damage you can fit on afterwards. Into G-rank we go with the Elder Cannon, which is focused on Siegeless play. It's a fine transitional option. There's also the Celtis Cannon with its newly found access to Siege Pierce 1s and enhanced Pierce 1 capacity, giving it a lot of flexibility for an early G-rank bowgun. It does come kinda late, but it is good for fully clearing G1 if you need to. In G2, the Baleful Knight gets a really important upgrade, giving it access to Pierce 3s, allowing you to use it for pretty much anything when it comes to Pierce. For pure Pierce 1 siege action, the Pluripotent Blazer hits slightly harder with higher attack. On the normal side, you have Nersilla's Buster Blaster, which has a high normal capacity, and even comes with some Pierce 1 capacity for backup. Arba Heftier is ideal for normal 2 siege play, and also comes with 8 normal 2 capacity rather than Buster Blaster's 7. For Lao, it's not going to look much different than normal, unlike Blade Masters who have to specialize for Lao. Gunners can avoid getting Tremor Res and instead simply focus on shooting down the crotch as you would with Blade Masters. I'd recommend just using Baleful Knight here with Repeat Offender if you can afford it, or just a lot of level of Critical Eye otherwise. In G3, you gain upgrades for the Buster Blaster and Pluripotent Blazer, as well as two returning bowguns, Mountainous Roar, Ablben Abzug, and Thorn Cannon. Also of note is a general mix set if you somehow don't have good charms at this point. Everyone should have at least a triple slot charm, and that qualifies as good to me. Anyway, you can make this Rathalos and Nagiakros mix set for Weakness Exploit, Attack Up, and Pierce Up just on the set itself. You'll want to gem in Shot Booster on this set, but otherwise it'll be fine if you have less than stellar charms. In G4, quite a few options get upgrades, including Mountainous Roar, Buster Lancera, Thorn Cannon, and the Heroic Celtus Cannon gaining its final upgrade without acquiring Hyper Celtus Queen parts. Nice! Now for Endgame. Unfortunately for everyone involved, there is a clear line between the best bowguns and the worst. Mostly because if you can't inject your entire gunner pouch into the monster in less than 10 seconds, you're automatically questionable to run. But at this point in the video, you probably aren't interested in such things, so let's discuss the bright and happy world of Heavy Bowgun outside the accursed land of Vinny. As I've alluded to before, what bowguns will be useful to you depends on what your playstyle is. If you like to siege a lot, then you're going to want to look for bowguns that can siege whatever shot you want to shoot. If you're not interested in that, look for bowguns with high capacities of the shot you want to fire. The higher the better, but usually at least 6 Pierce 1s or 8 normal 2s are good if you want general numbers. Next, you're going to want to look at the recoil of the gun. In most cases, conventional play with either normal S level 2 or Pierce S level 1 will simply need average, and for Pierce 2 or 3, some recoil. This natural recoil requirement isn't insurmountable or anything, but the lower you can get this without using armor skills, the better. Speaking of which, if you're looking to fire some unconventional shots, such as Status, or god forbid, Clust, you'll have to accept the recoil and lag, or try to get your recoil lower at the cost of damage. Or I guess you could run guns blazing. As I mentioned way earlier in the intro, reload speed and deviation are much less important to minimize, but you will have to pay attention to it in hunts and adjust your playstyle accordingly. As for attack and affinity, obviously the higher you can get them, the better. 320-ish attack is minimum. Now for armor skills. At the risk of repeating myself for the second time in this video, prioritize the shot type upskill of the shot you want to fire. Most commonly, this will either be Pierce Up or normal Rapid Up, but if you're next door to an insane asylum, Pellet Spread Up also exists, as does True Shot Up and Artillery Expert. Again, if you want details on why these shots aren't as great on Heavy Bowgun, please reference the Companion Shot Compendium video. If you're running Pierce shots, Shot Booster is also core. Never leave the house without it, since it greatly extends the critical distance of Pierce S level 1, making it drastically more consistent and letting you move around less to stay in critical distance. Then, Evade Extender if you're playing siegelessly. This is really nice for Heavy Bowgun because the mobility of Heavy Bowgun just isn't there at all, unless you cheat, so Evade Extender solves your positioning and mobility issues in a snap. Evade Extender can also be received through the combo skill Fleet Feet. This also grants a flat 20 attack bonus if you're at full health, which will be easy to fulfill as a gunner. Recoil down can also be required if you're running a weird bowgun and want to shoot, say, Pierce S level 1 with a naturally high recoil bowgun, so get that if you want your shots to be recoilless. After that, you run Weakness Exploit or Repeat Offender. Apparently there are people going around out there and telling others to use Repeat Offender on Pierce for some reason. Don't listen to them. What they don't realize is that most monsters have accessible shot weak spots, so Weakness Exploit would just give you 20% more affinity for what is essentially free. To reiterate, as a gunner, you do have access to any hit zone you wish, so there is simply no excuse to not run Weakness Exploit on the vast majority of monsters. The only exception for which you want to run Repeat Offender is when there is no weak spot, or the weak spot is hardly accessible, such as the broken back of Dread King Rathian, or Bolt Reaver Aslos' charged tail. Oh, and if the Repeat Offender shills are telling you about uptime or something, Just tell them that any competent bowgun user can shoot the weak spot and activate weakness exploit as consistently if not more, than repeat offender, okay? After that, it's just whatever else you can get for the most part. Critical eye, critical boost, even challenger. A few more shoutouts to niche skills. With the advent of the piercing element shots, Heavy Bowgun isn't completely overshadowed by Light Bowgun in terms of element gunning, but it's still gonna be rough. If you insist on quote-unquote experimenting with elemental bowguns, the respective elemental attack +2 will be required, as will True Shot Up if you're running piercing element. If you have the room for it, Ammo Saver is also nice to stretch out those ammo reserves. Speaking of which, True Shot Up and Ammo Saver are also nice for the internal ammo-based heavy bowguns. True Shot Up is a much more central requirement, however. Time to cover the endgame bowguns. I will let my bias shine through completely here and tell you about the unsieged bowguns before the sieged bowguns, starting with Valia Cannon. The Berdiov Heavy Bowgun is a fantastic option focused only on Pierce 1 shots, and with its high attack of 340 and affinity of 30%, it hits outstandingly hard. It also happens to carry P-Freeze level 1 and 2, so if you really want to play around with elemental shots, this is also your Ice Bowgun. Of note, you can make this a gun that shoots all 3 levels of Pierce if you either run recoil down +1 on your armor set, or you run guns blazing. But then you're running into 3 Hunter Art slot syndrome where you have to drop a good Hunter Art for guns blazing. If you're looking for a bowgun that can do that without using armor skills or Hunter Art slots, look at the Mountainous Torrent. While it loses the affinity that the Valia Cannon has, the Mizutsune Heavy Bowgun is a fantastic option that can fire all levels of Pierce recoillessly, granting it a lot of ammo for the longer hunts. It also happens to carry Water 2 and Piercing Water levels 1 and 2, so this is also your Water Heavy Bowgun. Next up, the normal focused heavy bowguns, starting with Le Deluge. The Shigeru Megala Heavy Bowgun has identical attack and affinity to the Valia Cannon, paired with a 9 normal 2 capacity. It even sieges the normal shots, so is also an option for sieged play. An alternative choice for this is the Cantor Descent. While it has less capacity for normal 2s, it has slightly higher affinity, and so is easier to reach 100% affinity with. Therefore, this HPG favors siege slightly more than Blade Deluge does, but both can work. Now for endless despair with the siege-focused bowguns. There are 3 main options, each focused on hunts of different lengths. The most common you'll see, like everywhere, is Zinogre's Orcus Corcus. With its internal slicing 2s, it can build up Finny Gauge quickly, and it can also siege pair 2s for a force-free opening early on in the hunt, allowing you to quickly vomit your entire gunner pouch on the monster. This bowgun covers the majority of matchups in the game, except for extremely long hunts, for which you'll want to use the Diablo Astuzuka from Diablos. Its access to Pierce 2 Siege means it'll be more effective for longer than the Orcus Corcus, making it best to use on EX Deviants or Hyper Huntathons. Be aware that you'll have to use recoil down +1 to make the Pierce 2 Siege recoilless, meaning you won't have much room for other damage skills. A popular option for this is Bitter Affinity, making its negative affinity much less of a hindrance. And finally, for shorter hunts, also known as bullying monsters, look towards the Daora Seti. While it does have slicing 1s to charge Vinny Gauge with, there are strategies that opt to simply open with Pierce 1s instead for a faster start. This bowgun is generally better when the para window you get with Orcus Corcus has less of an impact, such as when you can stagger lock monsters. Do be aware of the difference in deviation compared to the Orcus Corcus, especially if you eat for Feline Temper, so aim a bit to the right of where you want to hit to compensate. Finally, let's talk about the weird options for the weirdos out there. For Pellet, the awkward younger sibling of Normal and Pierce, there's the Lightbreak Starshatter for Siegeless Pellet. It's got natural some recoil and decent capacities for all pellet levels. For slightly more armor skill dependent pellet bowgun, there's Alpaka's Rahorakti, which curiously can siege pellet 3s, but cannot load them. This is because you have to gem and use all pellet S in order to access the 7 capacity on pellet 2s and 3s, but if you can, this is a good bowgun to use in either mode. Finally, if you somehow have a really good pellet charm, then Argerus's Arbarolest opens up as an option. While it requires recoil down +1 to negate pellet 3's recoil, it can siege all the pellet levels, and has good capacities for all of them as well. I should also mention that some people use Le Deluge for pellet 2 focus play since it can't siege it, but I see it as more of a side option for that particular bowgun. For the really weird elemental shots, well, we've already mentioned Mizutsune's Mountainous Torrent for water, and Berdia's Valia Cannon for ice. For flaming, you got 2 options. Agonactor's Agna Arbalest has P Flaming 2s and Flaming 2s, but lacks P Flaming 1s. It's also got slow reload speed, which can make you considered for non-siege play, but it has natural some recoil. If the reload speed and lack of P-flaming ones makes you concerned, the alternative option is the humorously named Yukumo Aura Gun. This bowgun has access to both P-flaming levels and triple slots, but lacks the flaming 2s of the Agna Arbalest, has less attack, and requires recoil down +1 to fire recoillessly. Finally, the Thunder option is Astalos' Wyvern Crasher. It also requires recoil down +1, but has access to the full array of Thunder shots. There isn't really a Dragon Bowgun, mostly because the ammo capacity for Dragon S is so little that you won't be able to slay any relevant monsters with just it, so there's that. What can I say about Heavy Bowgun that hasn't been said already by countless other people? Well, probably quite a few things. Heavy Bowgun's always been on the traditionally strong side of things, even when, or especially when, siege existed in the previous games, because as it turns out, making yourself immobile in the age of increasingly mobile monsters is not a good idea. I'm sure it was meant for multiplayer play, but having an incredibly high risk with marginal reward mechanic basically means it doesn't exist for any solo players, which explains why so many people just opted to do limiter removal in 3U and 4U to trade up the risky mechanic for straight up 15% more damage. Heavy Bowgun was also vastly more difficult to play in previous games, where misreading an incoming attack could easily lead to your death since your sheath was slow and your walking somehow even slower. Despite this, advanced players punched hard with Heavy Bowgun, demonstrating that good play can and should be rewarded with really good damage output. Then Generations came along and gave gunners several safety nets in the form of Adept and the absolute series of Hunter Arts, definitely punching up their abusability to questionable levels. Then Capcom went full fucking mask off with Ultimate, gifting Heavy Bowgun with the power of Vinny, granting it the equivalent of all the Infinity Stones and pissing everyone off, while simultaneously giving it some of the most okayest Hunter Arts of all time. What's more, Capcom knew what they were doing because they gave it the animation if you managed to screw up intentionally and run out of bullets while sieging, indicating that they knew what they were releasing to the world and refused to change it. I'm sure breaking the game is fun for a lot of people, but I simply cannot condone this sort of behavior, especially when I see Vinny users constantly cart online when they should simply not do so at all. Vinny overshadows everything else Heavy Bowgun related simply due to its existence. End of. That's a goddamn shame. Okay, we're at the end of the video, so I'm pretty sure I filtered everyone else out at this point. Let's actually, unironically, break down Vinny. Use this insane power at your own risk, because I certainly will not take responsibility for any cards you may stain during use. In either state, when you trigger a Vinny Sheath dodge, you can press X while you're in the dodge animation to keep your Heavy Bowgun out. Something which literally every other Valor weapon cannot do. Ugh. When you perform a Vinny Sheath, you can press X to initiate a Vinny load. This is a fixed-length reload that, if you perform it this way, takes a while to do, and is slower than even the slowest normal reloads. This is because you need to release Y, then wait for sparks to fly out of your Heavy Bowgun to press X. Doing it this way makes your reload almost as fast as the fastest reloads. Either way, performing a Vinny load causes your bullets to gain a red background. Outside of Gun 2 Gun Harder state, you cannot siege, and while your bullets have a red background, they only speed up your Vinny gauge gain when you connect with them. Of note, multi-hit shots tend to charge up the Vinny gauge more quickly than single shots. So, for example, you'll often see people use Slicing S and the like to charge Vinny. Inside of Gun 2 Gun Harder state, you gain, suffice to say, several benefits. Firstly, when you siege, the bullets you fire turn into what the game calls voltage shots. As you hold down A, your bullets continuously fire faster and faster until you run out, at which point you'll perform this animation which you cannot cancel out of, except if you use Hunter Arts. Unfortunately, you can avoid this animation by simply not firing the very last shot and rolling out of it instead. Speaking of which, you can roll out of Siege. And not only that, if you press and hold the B button for a short time during the roll, you start the power run, which doesn't take any stamina, and what's more, allows you to regenerate stamina during it. You can roll out of the power run in any direction, though doing it in the direction you're already running will take less time to do than in the opposite direction. And during the slide, you can press X and A to start sieging again, or you can start up another power run by pressing and holding B once again. I should add that on top of these insane benefits, you also get a free evasion +1 effect, which is technically untrue since it only gives you 11 frames of invincibility, but details. You abuse this primarily to dodge out of attacks at the very last second, maximizing your seize windows. Oh, and while your bullets have a red background from Vinny loading them, they gain a small damage boost. You can also perform Vinny Sheave while your menu is open if you have the else to control type as type 2. Useful for combining, then immediately Vinny loading, because of course you can. I'm not even going to clarify what Vinny's strategy even is, partially because I never use it, out of utter disgust. You siege, you win game, simple as that. What I will say is that, despite my disgust for it, it does take more skill than, say, Valor Longsword does, because you also have to spin the typical gunner plates of positioning and managing critical distance on top of maintaining the Vinny gauge. But when you get really good at it, maintaining the Vinny gauge is the least of your concerns, since, as it turns out, nearly uninterrupted vomiting of your gunner pouch into the monster 24/7 also helps maintain Vinny for the entirety of the hunt. Great. Look, if you just came to this video looking for the answer for the strongest bowgun style, and possibly the strongest weapon style combination in the game, then it's Vinny Heavy Bowgun. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is broken and imply that it takes zero skill to use, because it certainly does. I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that nothing aside from Vinny is worth playing, because Heavy Bowgun was traditionally strong without it, and that fact remains true in this game. Like Valor Longsword, there's a whole world of Heavy Bowgun aside from Vinny, so go and explore it already, jeez.